along too much here. But Tony was raised in Hayes and received his bachelor's degree. Sorry, my tongue tiedness sometimes gets to me. His bachelor's degree in political science from Fort Hays State University and earned his Juris Doctorate degree from Notre Dame Law School. He's an associate professor.
Full professor now.
Oh, yeah. Full professor now. Fantastic. Thank you for correcting me. At Fort Hays State University. In his spare time, he promotes the First Sunday devotion at Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish, as well as sings for masses. He's married to Christine, and they have 2 adult sons, Michael and Christopher. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. Michael and Stephen.
Michael and Stephen. My goodness. I don't know how. Yeah, sorry, Stephen, that... we got that wrong. I apologize, but thank you for correcting me on that also. Feel free to correct me on anything today.
It's kind of funny. His godfather and his confirmation sponsor is Christopher. So
maybe that.
So and they both look very, very alike. I mean, they're definitely cousins. There's no doubt about that.
Fantastic. Well, it's great to have you into the studio today. Sure. I guess we have a little bit of a clue of what you may be talking about today.
Yes, we do.
But I want to get a fullness of the picture of what the wisdom you want to impart on us through the gift of the Holy Spirit. And so we're going to get to that. But first, I want to get to our trivia question. So if you want to answer this trivia question, or if you want to donate or do both, please call to 785-621-4110. That's 785-621-4110. All right.
So you weren't asking that of me.
Here we
I wanted
go.
to answer the question or donate.
No.
I could do both.
You could do both, but you can't be the winner of the trivia question now.
All
so
right.
only the people listening. But feel free to donate. That
Sure.
would, yeah. All right.
Absolutely.
Here we go. First question of the 8 o'clock hour. How is Cain described in the book of Genesis? Is it A, a keeper of sheep, B, a hunter, C, a worker of the ground, or D, a shepherd? How is Cain described in the book of Genesis? Is it A, a keeper of sheep, B, a hunter, C, a worker of the ground, or D, a shepherd? Call into 785-621-4110. All right. We are blessed to have Dr. Tony Gabel in here with us. I think we're going to be talking about the first Saturday devotions. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So I'm going to just kind of let you lead us off on where do you want to go with the first Saturday devotions? What is it? How do we do it? Anything you want to start us with?
Okay, absolutely. But before that, I'll say E, as far as Cain is concerned, a cube of sugar. So there's your dad pun for the day.
Some people are laughing and some people are rolling their eyes.
I suspect there are a few groans out there.
You know how old you are by depending on which one you're doing.
Well, all right. Well, the Fatima message, that's where I was looking at today.
Okay.
Because after all, the theme for this Care-a-Thon is His mercy endures forever. And I think if you take a look at Fatima and in particular what has been requested of us and what's been promised, there is certainly a mercy there that is granted to us. And one of the things I wanted to take a look at today, or at least during our conversation, is the vision that Sister Lucia had during 1929, so June 13th of 1929. We'll talk about that just a little bit later. But before we jump into this and get into that topic, a couple of things about the first Saturday devotion. Just so people know that we do have that devotion, and we certainly practice that at Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish in Hayes. I know St. Joe's does as well. So this coming Saturday is a first Saturday, so Saturday, December 2nd. So at Immaculate Heart of Mary, we have a rosary before Mass at 7:30. Mass at 8, and then we have a directed or guided meditation afterwards. All 3 of those are required, as well as sacramental confession, but I would encourage people to go to confession before or after that first Saturday. Receive communion, of course, as long as you are in the state of grace, but I encourage people to go ahead and go to confession prior to that. But please, if you can, start that devotion as early as this weekend.
Absolutely. And the You mentioned the parishes that are doing it. You don't have to belong to a parish that is doing it.
No,
I
not at
mean,
all.
you can take up this devotion, because we have. I would imagine that not every parish in our diocese or everybody that is listening, that their parish may not offer it. But if you know one close, yeah, you can do that.
Mhm. Yeah, you absolutely can. And so I know that not every parish in our diocese has a separate Saturday mass just for Saturday. Of course, we have a Saturday mass perhaps in the evening in anticipation of Sunday.
Yeah.
But not all parishes will have, for example, a Saturday morning mass as St. Joseph's and Immaculate Heart does. I'm not sure. Does St. Nick have a Saturday morning mass or not? Off the top of my head, I
I
don't
work
know.
there, and now that you put me on the spot, I don't even remember at the moment. I am so sorry,
No, that's all
Father
right.
Damien.
Well, he can take that up with you later, I
No,
suppose.
actually, I don't think we do because we have a men's group
Okay.
that meets there.
Oh, on Saturday mornings?
Yes,
Very good.
yeah.
Very good.
So.
Well, anyway, so if you take up this devotion, certainly as early as this Saturday, you can start that. So some of the requirements, I sort of listed them out and just sort of refresh some people's memories because we've talked about this on previous occasions. So the requirements are, of course, to go to confession, sacramental confession.
Mhm.
And by the way, each one of these requirements must be completed with the intention of making reparations to the Immaculate Heart of Mary.
Okay.
So when you go to confession, you offer up that confession in reparation for the sins committed against the Immaculate Heart. And so you have that intention as you're doing that. So go to sacramental confession. And so the second thing is to attend a Mass. And of course, the Mass may be offered up for various intentions that day at that particular parish. But in your own mind, you're offering up your graces you receive from the Mass in reparation again for the sins committed against the Immaculate Heart. The third thing is receive communion with the same intention, sacramental communion, because we can to actually receive the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ in the Eucharist, and then pray the Rosary. 5 decades of the Rosary. That's what we're normally used to. So we would pray that and then meditate 15 minutes upon the mysteries of the Rosary. It can be an individual mystery, all 15, all 20, a set of them. So say the joyous mysteries or the sorrowful mysteries, but to meditate on those for 15 minutes. And in doing so, the idea is to see the sacrifices of Christ, see Christ's life through the eyes of Mary. And in that way, we are brought to Jesus through Mary, our mother. That's the whole goal. And if you think about it, if you start this devotion, and the idea of a devotion is to harmonize, as our bishops of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops actually said, the idea of devotions is to harmonize our life with the liturgy itself. I will read a quick comment here about that. So this is from Popular Devotional Practices, Basic Questions and Answers. This is from 2003. The Fathers of the Second Vatican Council recognized the importance of popular devotions in the life of the Church and encouraged pastors and teachers to promote sound popular devotions. They wrote, "Popular devotions of the Christian people are to be highly commended, provided they accord with the laws and norms of the Church." More recently, Pope John Paul II has devoted an entire apostolic letter to a popular devotion, the Rosary, calling on bishops, priests, and deacons to promote it with conviction and recommending it to all the faithful. Confidently taking up the Rosary, once again, rediscover the Rosary in the light of Scripture, in harmony with the liturgy, and in the context of your daily lives. So the idea behind devotions is we should harmonize those personal devotions that we have, that we cultivate, whether it's a devotion to a particular saint, perhaps a devotion to the way of the cross, a devotion to prayer life, in fact, and a devotional reading of the Bible. We should harmonize that with the sacrifice of the Mass, the liturgy that is there, and in that way draw ourselves ever closer to God.
Absolutely. And that's the thing with all of these is, sometimes people are like, well, what's the end goal and stuff like that. And you already talked about that. But the beautiful thing about it is that if you look toward these, look at the things that you do: confession, Mass, communion, Rosary, meditate on the Rosary. Everything that Mary wants is to point you to her Son.
Right.
And so if you look at it, you're like, oh, well, that makes me a better person. That makes me better. That brings me sacramental graces. Like, wow. Yeah, if I do these things, no wonder it would have some sort of effect on my spiritual life and my relationship with Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about this, the request for this particular devotion is 5 consecutive first Saturdays.
Hmm.
But nothing says that you do you're one and done.
Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly the promises are there, and that's what's been requested. But just imagine if you continue this devotion on a monthly basis, and you're there recollecting your sins once a month at least, right?
Yeah.
And in that way, you're bringing yourself into reconciliation with your Lord and King, Jesus Christ, and gathering His mercy from that. Our Blessed Mother is saying, "This is what I want you to do because it gets you closer to our Son." And then in that same weekend, that same Saturday, you go and you attend Mass, which of course is the representation of the sacrifice on Calvary. And so you witness that and then partake in that sacrifice in the Eucharist and draw close and to Christ. And as Bill mentioned, and you were talking with Bill during the last hour, you now become a tabernacle of Christ Himself.
Yeah.
And that Mary's asking you, do this, and she's pointing towards her Son, and so you draw Him into your life. And then you say the rosary, and in that time of the rosary, as you're doing your vocal prayer and your perhaps even your meditative or mental prayer as you're praying the rosary, you're seeing Christ's actions through her eyes. And again, drawing ever closer to Him. And then finally meditating on those quietly, maybe even getting up to contemplative prayer, perhaps, if you're so graced, upon those mysteries once again. Also, Mary pointing you towards Christ, pointing you towards our triune God. I mean, how can you miss if you actually do this devotion regularly on a Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. Want to take a very quick break to congratulate Lisa Eisminger. She was our trivia winner. Congratulations, Lisa. Another wonderful person out there. Everybody that is listening is a wonderful person. All of you who are donors, because I say that because here's another one. An anonymous donor from Salina pledged $50. And that $50 just became $100 with our matching funds. So thank you so very much. We so much appreciate it. Keep those pledges coming. Keep us on the airwaves, 785-621-4110. So Lisa's question was, how is Cain described in the book of Genesis? Was it a keeper of sheep, a hunter, a worker of the ground, or a shepherd? And he is described as a worker of the ground. We'll get to another question here later on. So stay with us because we are talking to Dr. Tony Gabel. We're talking about the first Saturday promises and what can come with that. You're listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Fall Care-a-Thon, His Mercy Endures Forever. We have that Care-a-Thon goal of $125,000. We started this morning with over $50,000 already raised, but we need to keep chipping away at that every bit that we can. So no matter what your pledge is, it helps us. Even if you call in and you're like, you know what, I can give $5, that is awesome. Because especially with those matching funds, your donation immediately gets doubled. And those people who give us those matching funds, they do it with the purpose of, I want these to be used up. They don't give it and hope, man, I hope that this comes back to me. They give that money because they're like, I want to challenge others to give, and so that my money can double theirs. What an awesome blessing that is. And what an easy way for some of us who can go, you know what, I think I could give this much, to be able to use the gift of stewardship, the gifts that God gave us, and send it forth, and allow other people to hear the message of Christ out there. So
the matching funds, it's your opportunity to spend someone else's money.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, on a very good cause.
Exactly. That is a perfect way to put it. Thank you so very much. It's kind of like asking mom and dad, hey, I want to go buy something. Can you give me the money? Well, sure.
We'll match you.
We'll match you. There you go. All right. Back with Dr. Tony Gabel here. Just talking about all of the blessings that can flow from the first Saturday devotion. The greatest blessing is we become closer to our Lord.
Right. Absolutely. That's the whole point about it is this devotion was asked for, was requested by our Blessed Mother and also by Christ Himself in later visions that Sister Lucia had. to do that, to not only make reparations for the sins, the blasphemies that are committed against the Immaculate Heart, but ultimately to draw us closer to Christ Himself, to our Triune God. And as I was looking at preparing for today, one of the things that struck me, and I'm not sure many people know, Sister Lucia, of course, and Francisco and Jacinta, they all saw our Blessed Mother during the 6 apparitions in Fatima, Portugal in 1917. But during the July 13th, 1917 vision, that's where the secret of Fatima was given to them. And there are 3 parts to that. The second part of that secret pointed to a promise or promises of the Blessed Mother coming back and requesting the beginning of the devotion to her Immaculate Heart through the first Saturday devotion, and then also for the consecration of Russia. And so she said, I promise I'll come back and request those things. And so that was in July 13th of 1917. So the other 2 dates to keep in mind are the establishment of the first Saturday devotion. That's where the Blessed Mother appeared to Sister Lucia and said, look, this is now the time I'm requesting that this first Saturday devotion begin. And that's where we get the requirements for it. And that was on December 10th of 1925. But what we don't hear as much about, at least the details about, is the request for the consecration of Russia. So our Blessed Mother returns to Sister Lucia in her convent in June 13th of 1929. And at that point in time, she requests the consecration of Russia. But Sister Lucia in her diary has a fantastic entry. And this is where the tie-in to mercy, I think, comes in, at least for me. And there's a painting of this vision, various paintings of it. They're absolutely fantastic. And I think I gave one to Donetta. I think she's going to try to post it today to the Facebook account for Divine Mercy Radio. But anyway, I just want to read the quote from this, just to get us into this idea, to see this image as it was described. So this is from Sister Lucy. I had sought and obtained permission from my superiors and confessor to make a holy hour from 11 o'clock until midnight, every Thursday to Friday. Being alone one night, I knelt near the altar rails in the middle of the chapel, and prostrate, I prayed the prayers of the angel. Feeling tired, I then stood up and continued to say the prayers with my arms in the form of a cross. The only light was that of the sanctuary lamp. Suddenly, the whole chapel was illumined by a supernatural light, and above the altar appeared a cross of light, reaching to the ceiling. In a brighter light on the upper part of the cross could be seen the face of a man and his body as far as the waist. Upon his breast was a dove, also of light, and nailed to the cross was the body of another man. A little below the waist, I could see a chalice and a large host suspended in the air, onto which drops of blood were falling from the face of Jesus crucified, and from the wound in his side. These drops ran down onto the host and fell into the chalice. Beneath the right arm of the cross was Our Lady, and in her hand was her Immaculate Heart. It was Our Lady of Fatima, with her Immaculate Heart in her left hand, without sword or roses, but with a crown of thorns and flames. Under the left arm of the cross, large letters as if of crystal clear water, which ran down upon the altar, formed these words, Grace and Mercy.
Wow.
It's an amazing image just to think about it and to construct it in your mind as you read the description. The paintings are beautiful that I've seen of it. But to think that there in that image, you see the Trinity, represented as God the Father, God the Holy Spirit, and God the Son crucified, to then see the blood flowing from Christ's wounded head and from his side over the hosts and into the chalice, definitely telling us the real presence is there in the Eucharist.
Yeah.
And in fact, confirming what he always said is, I'll be with you always.
Yeah.
He's right there in the tabernacle waiting for us all the time. And then to see on the other arm of the cross the words grace and mercy. And those endure forever. If we embrace that cross, if we see that cross and venerate that cross, grace and mercy are awaiting for us, and especially in this particular devotion.
Yeah, most definitely. And when you started reading that, it reminded me of a video. I think it's called The Veil Removed. And it's just very quick. Have you seen it?
I've heard of it. I
Okay.
haven't seen it, so please.
There are things in it that, maybe I would change, and that maybe I'm like, is that really what angels would look like, and stuff like that. But get yourself past any of that and just pay attention to what, I mean, I think it's a 5-minute video,
Oh, this is the
something
one, what's
like that.
happening during the
Yes, it
mass.
shows,
Yes.
yeah, what's literally going on during the mass. And so, yeah, when you talk about the blood coming down his side, you know, and dripping into the chalice and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it kind of pulls back the curtain over our eyes and kind of shows you the realities of what is happening. And I think that as humans, you know, part of our problem is we want to be able to see everything. We want to be able to observe everything. We want to be able to prove everything. And so the spiritual realm sometimes to us seems like, well, maybe it's not really there, but it's just as much present and just as much real as, you know, Dr. Tony and I are sitting across from one another. We can see each other. We can talk to one another. Just because we can't observe it with our eyes does not mean it's not happening. And the reality of what is happening there, you know, I would just suggest go look it up on YouTube. It's not that long. You can spend 5 or 7 minutes, whatever it is, and just pay attention to what really is happening at the mass.
You know, a good book that I remember reading, I should go back and reread it, but it was a number of years ago, was Scott Hahn's book, The Supper of the Lamb.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a fantastic discussion of what takes place at the mass. It was something that profoundly changed my approach to the mass and how I attended and how I participated, how I assisted at mass, so to speak, to understand the sacrifice there that was taking place, and to really understand that what we see and don't see is that we are back there when the mass is taking place. Heaven comes down to earth, touches there. We are there with the communion of saints, and we are there very much as this image that Sister Lucia has seen. They're seeing again the sacrifice on Calvary. It's being represented in this situation, and it's rather profound. It's very, very profound to see. To know that we are bound across time and eternity with all the saints right there at that point in time, every mass that we go to.
Absolutely.
And if you want a foretaste of heaven, that's it. When you have your mind properly it constituted and aligned to what is taking place, it's very impactful.
Yeah. You know, and I think that when you understand that, and you know, we're humans. There are times I will admit that I go to mass and if I just pay attention with my human senses, then the mass falls short. But the mass never actually falls short. It's just me that has the issue, because I was listening to at NCYC, I was listening to a speaker and they said it so well. They said, the music may fall short. The homily may fall short. But you know what always shows up? The Eucharist.
Yes.
Christ always shows up. And it gives me tingles to say that and to remember that talk and to remember that and just be like, wow, that is so, so true.
In the hands of the humblest priests, in the humblest chapel, in the humblest location on earth, at Mass, at consecration, Christ our Lord comes down on that altar. You know, the King of the universe, the Master of the universe, he's right there.
Yeah.
And it's rather profound. And what's even more profound is when you look at the devotion, not only for Saturday, but other devotions. So some people have a devotion to the Eucharistic sacrament as reposed in the tabernacle, or they'll go to adoration, another fantastic devotion as well.
Yeah.
And to realize Christ is there. Fulton Sheen once commented, it was a great quote, and I'll probably not get it right, so just paraphrasing. He said, Christ is always waiting there for us in his prison cell of love, being in that tabernacle. And when I first heard that, it was just amazing. And when you think about it, Christ humbles himself so much to allow himself to be there, waiting for us to come to him at any time. To just sit there and to adore him, to be there with him, whether it's an adoration that we have at our Eucharistic Adoration Chapel, or just simply going into a church, kneeling down or sitting down, and reflecting upon Christ who's in the tabernacle. He's waiting there for us all the time. And that's what's happening, every Saturday with this devotion, to contemplate not only the Blessed Virgin's participation in this redemptive work.
Hmm.
After all, she was the one who said yes to God,
Yeah.
and we're asked to say yes to God. And hers was so complete and so full. We hope to model ourselves after that.
Yeah.
And then to know that she accompanied Christ all the way through his life, and what she experienced on Calvary. There she was, standing there with her son as he was dying. She was experiencing her own white martyrdom, if you will.
Yeah.
And so it's rather profound when you think about that. So to be with her and to see Christ through her eyes every first Saturday is a tremendous devotion. There are tremendous graces that flow from it. I mean, there are the graces that are promised with assistance at your death and various other things, but to be able to participate that and understand her suffering, not only then but even now, and make reparations for that. It's an outstanding way to bring oneself closer to her and closer to Christ through her.
Well, there are so many thoughts that come up when I mean, I almost don't even know where to go, because the first thing that hit me was, do we really contemplate that the Lord of the universe, as you said, that quote, in his prison cell of love, the Lord of the universe, who did not have to, but chose to out of love, made himself bound in a piece of bread. Who does that? Look at any other faith anywhere. No other God from any other faith humbled himself to say, I'm omniscient, I'm omnipotent, there's nothing I can't do. I don't have to do this, but because I made you out of love and I promise to be with you always, I will bind myself in this prison cell of love. As you said, he stated, and just to contemplate that, almost makes my mind just go blah. Like, holy cow.
The reality is like, even in that host, that consecrated host, it's no longer a piece of bread. It's the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. And the reality of that is just too overwhelming for us to even understand. And so it has to be in this very, very simple image for us to see, because otherwise, how would we even be able to stand in the presence of Christ himself? It's kind of funny. I remember listening to, it was probably within the last year, Father Nick Parker came in and had a discourse on Eucharistic miracles, and the idea that some of these we've seen where a consecrated host suddenly turns into a piece of flesh. Typically, it's there have been studies of this. It's a piece of flesh from a heart of all things. So it's the Sacred Heart of Christ. And the idea that it has to be revealed to us in this very physical manifestation of a piece of true flesh is sort of like God having to go ahead and take a 2x4 and smack us over the head and say, don't you see what is here? And now that it's flesh, it's even less than what it was, because now it's no longer the Eucharist, as Father Nick said. But prior to that, it was Christ's body, blood, soul, and divinity. And it's there. And yes, and Christ even humbles himself so much that he allows himself to be carried around in a pyx.
Yeah.
Think about that. And in perhaps someone's pocket, reverently so.
Yeah.
But to be taken to other places. Just imagine that. The God of the universe, our triune God, humble enough to be carried around from place to place. And it's just unbelievable when you think about it from that perspective. But all that brings us back to the Fatima devotion and this first Saturday devotion, and the idea to draw us ever closer into that reality. And there are so many graces that pour from it, and much of that comes from not only participating in it, but participating in the way of meditation upon the mysteries, meditation upon what is taking place and why we're doing it. And it's really profound. Devotions themselves, and this devotion in particular, are rather profound.
Yeah, something that brings to mind, because you were talking about Mary and her sort of white martyrdom that she would have gone through. There are never two souls in the history of this world that will be more closely united than Mary and her son.
Yes.
Because both of them are sinless and he is God.
Yeah. Yeah.
and um, and so because of that, one, imagine what she would have suffered. The closer a parent is in true love to their child, the harder it is when something happens to that child. It as a parent.
Mhm.
One of the hardest things is to watch your children suffer. And for her to know, remember that it was revealed to her, and you also, your heart will pierce.
Yeah.
A sword will pierce, and so she knew that this was going to be a tough road for her. Yet she said yes anyway. How many of us knowing, like, if it was revealed to us, like, okay, this is going to be a very, like, you don't even understand how difficult this is going to be. This is going to be very difficult. How many of us would be like, your will be done? So this devotion, I think as you're speaking really is starting to bring up in my own self that how can I be more like Mary and say, God, you got this. You first are suffering. And so whatever you suffer will give me the strength to suffer whatever I need to suffer.
Right. And it's an amazing thing to then think about how we are to model ourselves upon the Blessed Virgin, and who's our mother by adoption, to model her and model her humility and her trust in God. But at the same time, you can flip the coin to the other side. And this is where the question always comes about, well, why this particular devotion? Why the 5 first Saturdays? What are the sins committed against her Immaculate Heart? One could see Jesus's sorrow, to see his mother mistreated, like we would see our parents who suffer as children. We could see and be attuned with them and understand that they're suffering, and why are they suffering, and what can I do? And so, the question was, of course, what are those blasphemies that are committed against the Immaculate Heart? And there are 5 of them. The first one is the blasphemy against the Immaculate Conception, because there are people who do not believe in the Immaculate Conception. And of course, we're celebrating the solemnity of that here in short order on December 8th, the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Mother. And so there are people who actively try to denigrate that or to deny that. And so that is what we're making reparations for in this particular devotion. The second one is the blasphemies against her perpetual virginity. There are people who deny that as well. And even though in our creed, we basically say she's perpetually virgin, and the church has declared that too. There are people who either don't believe or actively work against that truth. Blasphemies against her divine maternity, and at the same time, the refusal to recognize her as the mother of all mankind. So that also is one of the blasphemies that is being repaired for, is being there's a reparation made through this devotion. And blasphemies of those who seek openly to foster in the hearts of children. And children don't mean just little children. We are all children of God. The indifference or contempt or even hatred for this Immaculate Mother. I mean, there are people who do not like the Blessed Virgin Mary. And it's always confusing to me why they wouldn't, knowing that she has all concern for all of her children. And of course, she told us in the gospel and one of the few words recorded from her is, do what he says, referring to Jesus at the wedding feast of Cana. And finally, the offenses of those who directly outrage her in her holy images, So people don't want to see the Blessed Virgin Mary, venerated as she ought to be, as the Mother of God, and as the perfect creature of God. I mean, she is the most perfect creation that exists, that was created by our triune God. So there is due veneration. There is veneration due to her.
Yeah.
And there are people who wish not to do that and wish to scuttle it.
Yes, I want to pause there. I want to come back to that because there were so many good thoughts from that. I want to take a quick pause,
Okay.
Make a quick correction. So I announced that Mary Schrader gave earlier, it was not the Mary Schrader that I know. So sorry, Mary and Mary. The Mary Schrader that gave earlier today was from Harrington. So thank you so very much, Mary. Not Gordon and Mary, who are friends of mine. But now that's good to know. I'm glad I can make that correction. But thank you to both Mary and Gordon for being on yesterday, and Mary from Harrington for giving today. I appreciate that. I want to get to our second trivia question of the hour.
A very good name too, Mary.
Absolutely. I wonder. So if your name is Mary, maybe call in and donate during this hour. That would be wonderful. You can call 785-621-4110, or we're getting ready to do our trivia question. So that's the same number you call, 785-621-4110. All right, here we go. The Christmas Carol. Oh boy, they had to put it in Latin, really?
Which one is it?
Adeste Fidelis?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay. My boys teach me a little bit of Latin. They took some Latin, so they teach me a little bit of Latin every now and then. And then they make fun of people when they pronounce that wrong. They shake their head.
Adeste Fidelis.
Okay. I'm just going to let Tony read this question.
Thanks.
So, Tony, would you please read the trivia question for us?
Sure. The Christmas carol Adeste Fidelis is better known in English by which name? A. Jingle Bells. B. God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. C. O Come All Ye Faithful. So the question again, the Christmas carol Adeste Fidelis is better known in English by which name? A. Jingle Bells. B. God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. C. O Come All Ye Faithful.
Thank you very much.
You're certainly welcome.
785-621-4110. Get those phones ringing. That is absolutely fantastic. We are on with Dr. Tony Gabel. You're listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Fall Care-a-Thon. His mercy endures forever. And our Care-a-Thon goal is $125,000. Go to dvmercy.com and you can watch the thermometer go up. And you can also pay attention to how much we have raised toward that total goal. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get back to Dr. Tony Gabel. You stopped by talking about this first Holy Saturdays, making reparation for the blasphemies against Mary. And one of the things is, sometimes, especially if we have non-Catholic listeners out there, it's not because Mary is God, but if we think about it in this way, when anybody says something irreverent, cheap, wrong about somebody else, what that does is that demeans their personhood. It demeans their name. And so Christ has every right to say, this is my mom you are talking about.
Right.
And I do not appreciate that, and just like any one of us ought to and should stand up for our parents and say, no, that's my mom. Please do not talk about her in that way, and it'd be nice if I got an apology, and I think Christ and Mary have every right to ask that. And because there are some people out there that are just going to be like, who are you to tell me? The rest of us need to then pick that up and say, for all the things that are done wrong against you, Lord, and against your name, Mary, and who you are and your important role in our salvation, I want to help make reparations for that.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's in my mind, that's in fact one of the main goals is to comfort her and comfort her son. Comfort Christ our Lord, because if someone, as you said, would say something terrible about our mother, not only would our mother hurt, but we would hurt very much too. And so not only are we apologizing for those things and making reparation for them in our actions, and reparation is the key thing, trying to repair that damage. And that's why we offer up these things, which of course, it's just kind of always, I get a chuckle. These things that we're offering up are things that have been given by Christ to us through the church, through Holy Mother Church. Yeah. I mean, these aren't even ours. We're just essentially taking these wonderful gifts that are already given to us and then sort of putting them back in the hands of God and saying, I'm offering up the graces from this. And in order to repair damages that have been committed against against the Immaculate Heart, and against also your Sacred Heart, Jesus.
Yep.
It's an amazing thing to do, and it's an amazing thing to contemplate. And crazily enough, I was thinking of something else, and as I was saying those things, it just slipped out of my mind. So now I'm trying to think of what I was going to say.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll throw something in here
Okay.
then really quickly, because as you were speaking about that, and I tried to write these down, all of the blasphemies against
Right.
Mary and her person. One of them, is blasphemies against holy images. So there's all kinds of paintings, all kinds of art and stuff like that. And so if you want to know, like, I guess, what drives Satan mad? Well, look at the things that are being done to images of Mary. There are things out there that I can't even say on the air
Yes.
that are done to images and pictures of her, and people are so-called calling them art.
Yeah.
And so if you want to look and go, okay, well, is this actually wrong? Are Catholics wrong in their veneration of Mary? I would say maybe even start taking a look there. If it was wrong for us to do that, then Satan would love it, and he wouldn't do those things against Mary. If you're following me.
Yep.
Because veneration of Mary is a very good and holy thing, because she's all of our mother, our spiritual mother, and because she points us towards Christ, then Satan hates that, and he wants to destroy her image, which is why they do things like this to those pictures, is to demean her worth.
There are two aspects to that when you look at the demeaning of the sacred images. The first thing is the defacement or the debasement of beauty.
Yeah.
I mean, truth is beauty, and in beauty we find truth. And so it sounds a little circular, but if you're following me here, if you look at, you've probably walked into various churches. Some of them are newer, some of them are older, but ones that have been beautifully decorated.
Yeah.
And you see the artwork, and immediately you're drawn to the artwork, not because of necessarily the image that is there, but you look at it and you say, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
And you're stunned, first of all, by the beauty. Second, that human hands perhaps could have created this.
Yeah.
And then you look at the image, and if it's of the Blessed Virgin, or if it's of the Blessed Virgin and Saint Joseph and the infant Jesus in a creche, you're looking at perhaps the nativity scene, a beautiful painting of it. Suddenly you're drawn into this contemplation, and your mind rises to God. Okay, so you undercut the beauty, that doesn't happen as easily.
Yeah.
You defame or you deface the image that is to be venerated. That's the attack against the message that is being conveyed. And so there's a twofold attack there. If it's no surprise that as you look around, sometimes you see things aren't as beautiful as they once were.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the architecture that you might see from time to time, whether it's what passes as edgy art nowadays. You begin to see that there doesn't seem to be an eye towards what beauty is. And you find some comfort going to some of these to museums that have older paintings, especially from the period of the 1400s, 1500s, and 1600s, especially by Italian or German masters. Absolutely gorgeous paintings. And suddenly you see that your mind is lifting towards God. And that brings me back to, I remember what I was going to say.
Okay, fantastic.
So as opposed to the blasphemies or the terrible things said about her mother, and that hurts Jesus, to think about when one prays a Hail Mary and does so with intention and with devotion.
Mm-hmm.
Because there, when you say the Hail Mary, you're giving honor to Christ's mother. And just imagine how he probably enjoys hearing that from your lips, to repeat the words of the angel Gabriel, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee.
Yeah.
And then to repeat the words of Saint Elizabeth, who says, blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb.
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine, when our parents, when we hear from friends about how they admire our parents and those wonderful stories, they say, oh, you should have seen your parents back when, or they did this, or your dad did this for your mom, or your mom always did this for your dad. And you sit there and you have this sense of immense pride and love for your parents. Just imagine how great that is when Christ hears us say that about his mother,
Yeah.
as opposed to what we see, these sins committed against her Immaculate Heart.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. You said that so much more beautifully than me. Thank you. But I mean, to kind of just
Thank you for prodding me along this path.
hammer that point home. Yeah, the beauty draws us towards the transcendence. And there was I don't remember who it was. Maybe you will know. But I'm thinking it's a very prominent theologian in our times right now said, he's a convert. And he said, if Catholics are wrong, how did they get beauty so right?
Yeah.
Because he was looking at all the old Gothic era type cathedrals and stuff like that. And I think he walked in one, maybe in Rome or somewhere. I could be wrong. But yeah, I was looking at it and was like, and that was kind of his first draw towards, I need to take Catholicism seriously and look at it. And then he became Catholic. And it was because of beauty that drew him towards the church.
It's amazing what that will do. You know, Catholic art, good Catholic art,
Yeah.
draws the mind towards God and helps elevate our minds towards God. And
Yeah.
that's really what is necessary. And I am now, again, I had something else in my mind I was going to follow up on.
Well, I'm going to put
okay.
a shameless plug in then for Immaculate Heart of Mary. Well, for all of our churches here, because we are blessed in Hayes. You know, St. Nick's, we did a renovation here a few years ago, and people are still like, oh my goodness, it's gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
And Immaculate Heart, I've seen the artist renderings, and when that is finished, you know, I said yesterday, I'm not even a parishioner there, but I'm so excited to go there. You know, daily mass or whatever it is I may show up there for. Yeah, it's already beautiful in there, but it's going to be, like I said earlier, it's going to be that transcendent beauty that it is going to draw your senses up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost going to make it impossible to not think about God when you walk in there.
Yeah, I think it's going to turn out very, very well.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen different renderings of it. I'm looking forward to it myself. Can't wait till that day when it's all done.
Absolutely.
But there's going to be a long time to get there.
Yes. Quick break. Congratulations to Jackie Hafner. She was our trivia winner. The question was the Christmas Carol Adeste Fidelis, kind of. All right. Yeah. Dr. Gabel's looking at me like, yeah, good try. Is better known in English by which name? And the correct answer was, "O come all ye faithful." So congratulations to Jackie for winning that. We'll get your name put into that drawing at 6 o'clock today for that $50 gift certificate to Messenger Traditional Catholic Books and Gifts. You are listening to our fall Care-a-Thon. His mercy endures forever. Our Care-a-Thon goal is $125,000. We still do have some matching funds. So just earlier this hour, we had a pledge of $50, which means that it immediately became $100. Please continue to call in. Please continue bringing us your pledges. We are here with a wonderful guest, Dr. Tony Gabel, talking about the first Saturday devotion, and we have gotten so much out of this already. There are so many things we've talked about, but I want to get back to it and see where Dr. Tony is going to take us from here. So take it away.
Yeah, where am I going to take it from here?
Oh, okay.
But going back to the very beginning, this idea of devotions, and we do have several devotions that help see us the mercy that is available for us.
Sure.
Looking at the mercy that endures forever. You have, of course, the Divine Mercy devotion, and in particular, the Divine Mercy Novena that takes place after Easter and before Divine Mercy Sunday. The mercy that is extended, the grace that is extended to us is unbelievable. I mean, if people really look into these devotions and take them seriously, there's so much available to us to help us not only in our daily lives, but especially at that moment where we move from this life into the next, which will be its own challenge. First Friday devotion, another devotion that exists, and 9 First Fridays, consecutive First Fridays, and the act of reparation to the Sacred Heart of Jesus in that. Another fantastic devotion, again, graces that abound there. And to see, once again, as you mentioned, that the souls are so closely united, the Sacred Heart, the soul of Christ, the soul of Mary, the Sacred Heart of Jesus, the Immaculate Heart of Mary, to see those two devotions coming together on a First Friday and a First Saturday is a tremendous opportunity for us to continue to grow in our love and devotion to our God. And you have the opportunity to do a First Friday tomorrow.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I encourage people to also do that. Now, St. Joseph's Parish in Hayes has, if I recall correctly, a First Friday devotion, an act of reparation at, I believe, noon. So if anybody out from the St. Joseph Parish wants to call and correct me or confirm that, that'd be great. But that is an opportunity that's available there at St. Joseph's Parish.
That's awesome. So the First Fridays is 9 First Fridays.
9 First Fridays. Yeah.
And the first Saturdays
It's 5.
is 5 First Saturdays.
Right.
So Lord, don't get mad at me for saying this, but when you said that, it was kind of like Jesus came along and was like, you know what? I want to give you guys a devotion to my Sacred Heart. And so, here are go to Mass for 9 First Fridays. And Mary was like, I think we should make it a little easier. It's kind of like a mom going, let's give him a little bit more help there, son. Let's do 5, and because either devotion is focused on the same thing, at strengthening your relationship with our Lord.
Right. And even if you go to the novena for Divine Mercy, it's 1 week.
Yeah.
And so when you think about that, there are so many opportunities for us to take advantage of this. Each devotion, as the Vatican II has said, as popes have said, as our Conference of Catholic Bishops has said in the United States, devotions are to harmonize with the liturgy, not take place of it, not interrupt it,
Yeah.
but to see our Sunday weekly life lived out in daily or in other moments through devotions that draw us closer to God. That's what matters. To find that devotion that perhaps works best for you and to draw closer to God that way. Now, I have a particular interest in the 5 First Saturdays for a number of reasons, but to have that devotion and then to maintain it every first Saturday to go, I've noticed a deepening of my love for God, my love for the Blessed Virgin, and my being drawn closer to God through this particular devotion. And so I also see it as something that's happened recently within the last 100 years. And so a request from our Blessed Mother, very, very specifically accompanied by a great miracle, the miracle of the sun on October 13th of 1917, that confirms its authenticity. The church has come out in 1930 and said, this is a worthy, the events of Fatima are worthy of belief.
Yeah.
And so, giving permission for this to take place and to cultivate that, I think there are many fruits to be gathered from this particular devotion if we only take the time and effort to do it. Because and nowadays, even you say 5 days or 5 First Saturdays, it sounds easy, but how many other things in life compete for our time on Saturday mornings?
Yep.
Especially in the 21st century. I mean, and even on Fridays, how many things compete for our time on a Friday morning or even a Friday evening, if there's a Friday evening Mass, to compete with us, especially for 9 consecutive First Fridays. So there is definitely a sacrifice on our part in order to do this. And frankly, the greater the sacrifice in many instances, the greater the reward, the greater the graces that flow from it.
Yeah. I would agree. And I definitely don't make it to daily Mass nearly enough. I mean, hardly ever. But when I do, I mean, you never leave daily Mass going, man, I wish I would have done something else.
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing that always, I don't want to say it amazes me because it's just natural. But you meet someone and you're like, man, they are just a great person. And then you happen to show up at a daily Mass and they're there. And you're like, well, that makes sense, because they're probably there all the time. And that's kind of the thing is, you notice that a lot of the people that are going to daily Mass, one, they're more calm, they're more peaceful, they're more joyful, they handle situations better. I mean, they're not perfect, they're human, but I have noticed that's happened to me many times where you just notice kind of like that person seems to be a lot more holy than I am. And then if you show up and you're like, oh, they're daily Mass goers, or they're first Saturday Mass goers. And I'm not trying to say that like it just automatically makes you a saint, but there's definitely graces you're getting by going to those.
and coupled with that, I think you'll find probably something that also brings greater peace to people is frequent reconciliation, going to
Yeah,
confession more often than the required once a year.
absolutely.
And that's the beauty about the first Saturday devotion, is that it requires that confession to take place. And so then you become attuned to the spiritual battle that's taking place around you, and how the devil is trying to get you to sin, and how maybe you've fallen, and then to come to Christ in the sacrament of that, in that wonderful, wonderful sacrament, and to humbly ask for forgiveness and to be reconciled to it. And to do that frequently, monthly, or maybe every 2 weeks even, to really nitpick at your soul, and to clean it, and to get it ready. And then, especially in conjunction with a devotion, to prepare yourself to receive Christ in all his glory in the tabernacle of your body. I mean, as you and Bill were talking about it, you become a tabernacle, or I think you mentioned you're walking monstrance.
Yeah,
As I was listening, as I was driving here, and don't you want that to be completely clean, as transparent as possible, so people can see Christ in his fullness in you? And so that's why my sort of parting comment I've made the previous times I've been here on Divine Mercy Radio is go to confession, stay confessed. To anyone who's listening out there, if you've been gone from confession for a while, Father probably won't care too much. He'll be absolutely joyous that you are there. And frankly, we need to keep our priests busy at the confessional too.
yeah, absolutely.
And that, because that is a one way to bring some of us sheep who have gone astray, including myself, to bring us back into the fold and bring us closer to God. So that is a wonderful sacrament, and I encourage everyone to partake in it, especially as we're approaching Christmas.
Yeah.
And not only are we remembering Christ's birth here on earth, but then, of course, receiving him in communion.
Absolutely. Wonderful words of wisdom there, Tony. Thank you so very much. I wholeheartedly agree. Go to confession often. Keep our priests busy. And I've heard so many stories from priests that is their absolute favorite thing to do. And, some of them even come to tears when somebody rolls in and it's been 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and they're at that moment, they are welcome home.
Yeah.
So thank you, Tony, so
You're
very
certainly
much
welcome.
for your time.
Thank you,
I
Mark.
really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Have a wonderful day. Keep
You do
praying
the
for
same.
us.
I certainly will. And by the way,
Yeah.
after First Saturday, we do have coffee and donuts.
All right,
after
bonus.
after we do the guided meditation in the gathering space, we have coffee and donuts. So a little bit of some bonus for those of you who want to come.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You are listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Fall Care-a-Thon. His mercy endures forever. You are listening to one